And welcome, everybody, to episode 35 of the Odyssey Hour. We are your hosts, the Odyssey Paranormal Society team. And with us, our special guest here tonight, since we're not going to waste any time talking to each other, is our great guest, Mr. Chuck Zukowski. Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Hello. Good afternoon.
No, it is the evening, Chuck.
Good late afternoon.
Even where you are. So obviously, Mr. Chuck Zukowski is from Alien Highway and probably one of the leading voices when it comes to cattle mutilations and anything alien and UFO related. So pretty much this whole show is just going to be about that, and more importantly and more specifically, disclosure. And so to get everything started, because like I said, we don't want to waste any time. My first question to you is, what is disclosure and why is it important?
You talk about just disclosure in general. It's something that we've been trying to do for decades, is try to get the federal government to come out and say that, in fact, there is something unusual flying over the U.S. and people are seeing, really interesting objects, aliens, all kinds of stuff. But, it's kind of weird with disclosure. It seems like every 10 years, it seems like we get closer to like having the government actually release information saying, hey, they're here, type of thing. But it always seems like that doesn't happen. Something curtails it. And we knew we were getting close to at least some type of a formal comment from the Pentagon, at least from our federal government, about what was flying over the U.S. for the past few years that fighter pilots have been seeing. But COVID hit, and we're going, oh no, not again. Here we're getting close to possibly getting some information out to the public, and then COVID kind of hits, and then conspiracy, the theorists out there saying, well, they put COVID out there to stop disclosure, and that's obviously not the case. But lo and behold, I think we're in the very beginning of some type of disclosure, at least with the June 25th report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. What was so cool about that was out of 144 events they looked at, 143 they categorized as other, meaning not what I consider unidentified, but they didn't want to say unidentified because the media would just have a field day with it. So they say other, but in their explanation is basically saying that we don't have any scientific knowledge to successfully analyze what these things are. Well, isn't that what unidentified is? If you use science to try to identify something and it's unsuccessful, then it is by definition it's unidentified. So they played with some words in the document, so the media would have a field day with it, saying, "Oh my God, we have UFOs." But they did a pretty good job saying that we really don't know what's flying over the U.S. And what I liked about that was it's something that we've been trying to get them to say for. Geez, I've been doing this over 30 years, and I've personally seen things that I can't understand and they're unidentified to me. So it was kind of nice to hear the Pentagon come out and say, hey, guess what? We don't know what these things are.
Well, I'm sorry breaking here. Just have a follow-up question to that one. Because one of the things that I see them doing now, and I don't know if that is the government or whether just, like production companies and whatnot who are throwing out all of these, UFO related shows, but now they seem to be going away from UFO and now it's like UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. Why do you think they're trying to change like the branding of what it is now?
It's interesting. You would think that UAP was something fairly new, and actually that term was used back in the 60s. I think J. Allen Hynek, who was investigating Project Blue Book, was actually used it a couple of times too. So, it was just more of a, maybe at the time a little bit more of a mature term for unidentified flying objects. Means the same thing, right? Unidentified aerial phenomenons. It means the same darn thing. I think they were just trying to make it sound, I don't know, it's sound a little more scientific. But within the past few years, when UAP came out, they're trying to change it. Well, not really, because in the late, UFO's been out there since the late 40s, and then you get into the late 50s, early 60s, UAP was used. So both of those terms have been used, at least in the ufology field, for decades.
Anybody else?
Okay, I'm done. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, Chuck, thank you for joining us. That does it for us tonight.
Well, I say it's a good day because it's out here. I don't know about where you guys are, but it's still sunny, and it's about 80 degrees outside. So for us, it's still like late afternoon, and we're enjoying it because once, like people would know from Minnesota, once winter hits, it's all downhill from there.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's only because we can't go uphill anymore. We just slide right back down.
Just slide right back down.
Especially in Duluth. So, yeah. So, if anybody has any follow-ups to that or just wants to ask another question, be my guest.
I don't have a follow-up necessarily, but I have a topic that I guess I'm just curious about.
Yeah, have at it.
Because I'll be honest, I'm very interested in like aliens and UFOs and that stuff, but I don't really engage in it a lot. I'd like to more. But I've heard about this theory of like ancient aliens and aliens building the pyramids or whatever, or stuff like that, or like aliens have been here before. And I guess I wanted to kind of get your take on that since you know way more about it than I do.
Well, you're ghost investigators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
paranormal investigators. Chuck.
Paranormal is good because I like to say that because it seems like the word paranormal was at one point taken over by ghost investigators, and paranormal actually means anything other than normal, which covers everything.
Yeah.
So, and I joke about some ghost investigating where some cases, some investigators seem to think they're talking to a spirit where in actuality they may be talking to something else. So, that's kind of interesting. But, from your question talking about history-wise, well, you can go way back. If anybody out there that's watching this or listening to this can remember Zachariah Stitchin, he's written a few books. I think one of them, and I apologize, I think it was called The 12th Planet. I'm just pulling this stuff out. But he was like a cryptologist where he could, decipher ancient Sumerian scrolls. And I wish I had something similar to a scroll here, but it looked like a paper towel or a toilet paper roll. And the Sumerians, which were the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians, they basically scribed words on this like toilet paper roll, or and then they would made ink and they would roll it over rice paper, and they had a printing press. We're talking 5,000-6,000 years ago, which is what. So we've lost technology over the years, but the ancient Sumerians have a really cool story about how life started. Homo sapiens started on this planet, and it started in what we call Africa now. And basically, you had this alien race came down, and they didn't call it alien race. They had other names for it, but the star travelers, or whatever you want to call it, came down, and their story kind of goes like, they they took the hominids that were walking around at the time, to be the Cro-Magnons or whatever, and then they kind of like gene spliced them with a little bit of their DNA and came up with the Homo sapien, and then they had the Homo sapiens work in the mines. It kind of sounds crazy, but check out the book. He's a pretty credible guy, and this is exactly what the ancient Sumerian scrolls were saying. And so the Homo sapiens were working the mines, and over a period of time, the alien race started to intermingle with the Homo sapiens, and there were hybrids. And so when it came time for the aliens to leave, they wanted to eliminate all the Homo sapiens that were genetically created. And there was a great battle. And if you look at history into ufology, there was a great battle in what we call India now. And even India, some of their ancient texts talk about flying ships and atomic explosions and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of interesting that the Sumerians and the Indian culture were talking about kind of the same thing when it came down to a battle. And basically they decided, okay, we're just going to let you guys, whoever wants to stay here can stay here. We're going to go home. And so that goes way back to the ancient Sumerians. Now, what was really cool about that is some of the things that they were talking about. Now, the reason why they were here mining is because their home planet, and of course I'm using this in today's terms, but if you read the book, you can kind of like get an idea of what they were saying, that the planet was dying, the atmosphere was dying. So they were here mining minerals to go back and seed their atmosphere and protect it. Now, if you remember a few years ago, we had this whole ozone issue. And our military, our Air Force, actually, they were doing experiments, remember the whole, chemtrail experiments where they were seeding the clouds, with gold dust and magnesium. And you say, well, why gold and magnesium? Well, they're very, very high in electrical properties. And so they would put them in the atmosphere, and they'd sit there, float around, and then they'd shoot, high frequency radar beams, excite them, and try and repair holes and stuff. I mean, that was, not the technical definition, but the layman's definition. So it turns out that the ancient Sumerians were talking about this race were mining gold in what we call Africa now, and they were going to take the gold back, and they were going to fix their atmosphere. The same thing that we're having problems now with ours, with ozone layers and stuff. So it's really interesting when you read about that, and you're going, wow, that's, they're talking about stuff that we're kind of experiencing now, and yet this alien life form came down to get what they needed to go back to their home planet, and then and fix it. And so, and then there's other stories too, like if you watch those, the ancient Egyptians, where you see the petroglyphs, or the hieroglyphs, if you want, but I think the petroglyphs and of the alien, or the Egyptians with the elongated head, with a real long head. Well, that was basically what the aliens look like. And true, modern day science says, well, we think what they were doing, the people were wrapping their heads to make them look like, more intelligent. Well, what they were doing is, and that's true, some people were actually wrapping the baby's heads and wrapping to try and create that elongated head, because that's what the superior beings had, and they were trying to mimic it, if you want to follow that whole story. So there's always all these little stories, scientific ones and other ones that kind of intertwine, that kind of points back to, wow, was that really the case, and are we all alien hybrids? Of course, the jury's still out on that one, So did that answer your question?
Yeah. No, it did. It was just interesting the idea of, aliens having been here in the past and having some influence on our history is just very fascinating. So yeah, I appreciate you kind of talking about some of the big theories with that, or behind that.
I mean, there's all kinds of theories out there where they've been nudging us all these years. I talked to so our Native American tribes. I talked with the Apaches and or individuals with the Apache tribe and individuals with the Navajo, and they have people within their tribe that are called storytellers. And what they do is they're trying to keep the stories going through generations. of that particular tribe. And it was kind of interesting. Within about a year and a half to 2 years in between, I talked to a Native American elder from the Apache tribe and one from the Navajo tribe. I asked them about aliens, basically. And then I have to tell you about what we just learned with Alien Highway in 19. And so it was interesting that they both kind of said the same thing to me, and yet they never talked to each other. But so those stories probably intermingled between their tribes over the generations. Anyway, so basically, there's what they say. There's four basic entities on this planet, and the first ones are the blues, or what they call the blues, and the blues are whatever their word was for blue. Over the years, it became the English translation of the color blue. These are the little guys that come out of mountains. And what's interesting is if you look at what sightings we're still getting now, and we've had through folklore and generations, is you have leprechaun sightings, and then of course in Ireland and stuff, and then you have Menehune sightings in Hawaii. And I was just in Hawaii April this year, and I was talking to some of the people, the natives there, native of the island, and it was interesting that they still talk about having Menehune sightings, these little guys coming out of the mountains. And if you go to, we were in a big island of Hawaii, and there were sightings out there, but Oahu, the Menehunes are actually in their culture. They actually designed, supposedly old bridges and brick walls, and so there's actually places on the island of Oahu that you can go to, where the folklore is, hey, these guys designed that, built this thousands of years ago. Okay, so you have the blues, and then you have the ant people, and of course that's our English word for the Native American word, whatever ant is, and those would be the grays. Now it's not because of the eyes. There's still jury's still out too on the eyes. Is it really eyes that are oval shaped like that, or there's some type of covering that goes over regular eyes like ours? But these guys came out of the ground, and possibly from underground bases, and so that's why they were called the ant people. And they were like the worker bees. They had their own agenda, and they did whatever they were basically programmed to do. The blues, or the Menehunes and the leprechauns, they were more earth dwelling. They were doing whatever they needed to do to protect the planet. And so, if they saw people were misusing the earth, they would step in. Then we had the next level would be the snake people, which we call the reptilians. Now, the reptilians are the bad guys. Those are the guys about 6 feet tall and praying mantis looking like. And there's all kinds of sightings for generations of these guys. And they kind of control the grays, or the ant people. And so there's a dark side of that. And then the fourth are what they call the giants, or we call the tall blondes, or the Nordics, or there's a bunch of different names from them. And those are the guys that kind of like have a condo here. And every now and then they come in, and they're like the police of the planet. And if someone's misusing their power, like maybe the reptilians, then they're going to put them in check. And if you know anything about Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky, he's the one that actually, and I've known the guy for years, and every time I talk to him, his story has never changed. So he would be the only one that I know of that can clearly say that if these guys are here, he saw the Nordics or the tall blondes, and he saw the ant people, all in one location working together. The ant people were being managed by the Nordics or tall blondes or the giants, whatever you want to call them. So it's interesting that what he saw, what he experienced, is the same thing that the Native Americans that talked to me, said. So, so it's in our Native American culture. If you look up, I forget, it starts with the V. You probably, someone can remember the name of the craft from India, but then something or other. But if you look into ancient Indian culture, you're going to see all kinds of stuff. about aliens visiting the planet. And like I mentioned earlier, this great battle between them, which kind of coincides with what Zachary Stitchen said. So it's and the Hispanics, you can talk to any of the Hispanics, and you talk about UFOs, and they go, yeah, they've been around for a while. Just like the Native Americans say, yeah, you're not telling us anything new. So there's a lot of cultures on this planet that already accepted it. For some reason, out here in North America and in other countries, we're having a problem trying to accept it where, they've already have.
Does anybody have any follow-ups before I do mine?
I wanted real quick, just say one thing based on the preliminary assessment, right, that came out June 25th. I know I mentioned that 143 out of 144 the Pentagon was looking at was categorized under other. I just what I wanted to say was I wanted to say the other categories. The first category was airborne clutter, sort of be like birds, balloons, and stuff like that. The second one is like natural phenomena. That would be like lenticular clouds and other things that, sprites and other cool things that some people aren't aware of that naturally occur in our atmosphere. And then you have USG, or industry development programs. Those would be the Black Project programs, some of the stuff coming from the Skunk Works. Then you have the foreign adversary systems. That would be, China, Russia, and maybe a third world country that's dealing with some type of technology that we're unaware of. So out of all the cases, out of the 144 cases that they looked at, and it's really ridiculous that the departments that were involved in this was to look at these things was the FBI, NRO, NGA, NSA, Air Force, Army, Navy, DARPA, FAA, NOAA, NGA, and it goes, the list goes on and on and on and on about all the different departments that looked at it. So out of 144 cases, one case they were able to identify as a high altitude balloon cluster of some sort, maybe for weather or for whatever. The rest were all unidentified, and even unidentified under the case that the best of the electronics that our fighter pilots have cannot identify these craft, let alone even keep up with them. 1 minute they're there, the next second they're gone. And Commander Fravor was one of the pilots, that said this thing was just there and it's gone. The G-force, if there was any type of human inside, it would have killed the human with the amount of G-force and the speed it was making with the angles. And we don't even have the metal alloys on this planet that would sustain all that G-force without collapsing. So out of all those they looked at, right, they were able to identify balloons, and the rest went into the other category, or like to call it the UFO. I apologize for bringing that back, but that's kind of important for your viewers to understand that they looked at all the possibilities first before they came out with the preliminary. Now this was just the one that was unclassified for us. There's still a thicker one, classified that they got behind closed doors.
Well, that's what you're here for, Chuck, to give us everything that you have. So,
well, he's my right arm. Sometimes. So,
does anybody have any follow-ups to what he was? There you go. I'm so happy that you took that. But does anybody have any follow-ups? Because no, okay. So my first follow-up to what you were talking about before to Haley's question is so the blues is something I've never heard of before. Like I've never heard that classification before. Do you think that they are also the ones that are they're the ones that are part of the Blue Man Group?
Out of Las Vegas?
Or Chicago? They're all over the place. But these
guys are about 1.5 feet tall, maybe 2 feet tall. And I've seen the Blue Man Group in Las Vegas.
Maybe they're standing on each other's shoulders.
10 to 6 feet, yeah.
I was just saying. So, I mean, they say that the best place to hide is in plain sight. So, there you go. Just throwing that out there.
There it is. Well, you never know. And I'll tell you what. I got a story that, even though I know you're kind of like making fun, and the Native Americans are watching this, and it comes, come after you. You know, they're gonna put the Nila Lushi on you, the Skinwalker curse, the same way the Navajo curse.
They're gonna get to me in some fashion for some reason. So might as well do this.
Well, I mean, that's the reason why you know, the Skinwalkers are, you know, that whole Skinwalker legend is out there. It was the Ute tribe was battling the Navajo, and they were kicking their butts because the Ute tribe was doing a lot of trading with the Europeans and the Spaniards, because they were excellent tanning, you know, for tanning leather stuff, and so they would you know, trade with them and for tan leather, and they would give them guns and horses. So they're probably one of the first tribes that were able to go into battle on a horse, shooting a gun. So they were very, very good, and they were kind of kicking the Navajos' butts, and they were pushing from Utah into what we call Colorado now, right? And so the Navajo tribe cursed the Ute Indian tribe with Lee Nalushi, and I apologize, guys, I know I'm saying it wrong, but it's basically, that's what a skinwalker is. It's that can walk on all fours. A skinwalker will never, you know, be a bird or anything with two legs. Well, originally it starts out as two legs because it's, you know, it's a form of a human transforming into a four-legged animal, and so, you know, they cursed the Ute Indian tribe. So you go ahead and make fun of them, and they just might curse you with Skinwalker too. Me, I'm on their side.
All that's going to do is increase my popularity, so we're good.
Yeah, at your funeral.
Well, you know, some people have to take extremes. So
that's right.
But all right. Serious question though.
Okay.
So you had mentioned that, you know, it's a possibility or whatever that we are all hybrids in some fashion. You know, if they went back way back into the, you know, the Sumerian times and whatnot, and kind of made all of these hybrids. You know, one of the questions I don't think has ever been answered, and I don't know how it could, is why certain people get abducted and others don't. You know, we like to make jokes that if you live in a trailer park, you know, you're probably 10 times more likely to get abducted than somebody in a, you know, suburban area. But so my question is, do you have an opinion, or has it ever been brought up maybe that people who get abducted have some sort of lineage connection to the people way back in the Sumerian times, and they are specifically looking for like certain DNAs and stuff like that, and that's why those people get selected? Or do you truly think that it's a matter of chance?
You actually, I'm surprised you actually caught that. So good job.
That's why I'm the host, Chuck.
That's why you're the host with the most, right? So that's one of the things. You know, one of the theories, you know, out there is, you know, the whole abduction process. What they take from the humans is to make hybrids, and it would make sense to pick particular humans that would have some type of DNA lineage to them, right? Or something similar to them thousands and thousands of years ago. So it would make sense that, you know, why would you pick that person over that person? Because maybe that person's DNA is more in suit to what you know, they need. Now we always talked about that, but like you said, you know, if you follow the theories of the ancient Sumerians and you just throw that in the same cereal bowl with the ancient Sumerians, then you can see, okay, guess what? You know, there could be a connection between certain people, and, you know, and or these could be the people they're abducting now, could be the offspring through generations of their ancestors that were abducted, you know, generations and generations before. So that's, you know, so you kind of have the twofold. Either way, they're probably looking for something that has it's sort of like, I guess, if you have a hybrid of a certain plant between two plants, and then over the years, one of the plants that you made that hybrid from becomes extinct. Well, you could use the hybrid and pull what you need out of that hybrid to make the original plant that no longer exists, something like that. So there's, it's kind of cool, when you think about it. But from a science point of view, it's pretty logical. So yeah. Now you fall into the question with cattle mutilations. Why do they pick certain ranchers as opposed to other ranchers? And I've had cases where, one rancher's been hit multiple times, and the ranchers, what they do is they move their cows around basically as lawnmowers. They feed, they get them fed for free, and then they keep the grass and everything down in certain fields, and anyway, so they'll move them around, and so all the ranchers will be together, go, hey, can you move your cows over to my south pasture so they can cut that down? Mine's going to be over here, blah blah blah. And it's interesting. I had one case where one guy got hit all the time, and he moved his animals over, and then there was another rancher's here and another rancher's animals way over here, and there was easier access from roads to get to the other ones. Yet the one in the middle is the one that got hit. The one that got hit before that. So even with animal mutilation, sometimes they hit the same ranchers over and over again. And we would think, well, is that because of the way they raise the animals? Obviously every one of the cases that I've done, the animals are no steroid shots, maybe an insect shot to try and keep the insects from biting them and stuff. But that would be when they're calves, and then most of the time maybe a vitamin shot, when they're born. But none of them. They're all free grazing animals. But still, like you said, there's a reason why, and why is the big question. Why are they picking that one rancher and not any other ranchers that's in the general area?
Could they just be dicks? Like just be complete jerks? Is that maybe like, I don't like that guy, let's hit him again?
It's interesting because Tom Miller, who's one of my ranchers I've been investigating for been over 10 years now. He's probably lost 15, 16 animals. And but he also has, personally seen balls of light. And balls of light have been reported on his property from people who hunt on his property during hunting season. And so it's very, very active. He's the rancher that we talked to on Alien Highway, because he's such a cool guy, a real cowboy, second generation, and he just tells it like it is. Like, this is what I saw. He doesn't put anything on it, or padding on it. Could they be dicks? Well, it's really hard to say, because to be a dick, you would have to know a dick, I guess.
So are you doing the whole takes one to know one thing? Come on.
Pretty much. Well, because people ask me all the time, they go, well, what do you think the aliens are thinking? And I had to write a blog on it a few years ago. To know what an alien thinks, you would have to be an alien. We have no idea. We don't know their thought pattern, their thought process. We don't know why they're doing it. Yeah, they could just be dicks and just doing it. I had an interesting thought a while ago that I used to talk about on lectures and stuff, that the whole premise of actually, I talked about it recently too. The whole premise of animal mutilations, not just cows, but is for the blood, because in all the cases the blood's drained, but then you have these strange cuts, and then the animal, basically with a mutilation case, the animal is like sitting here grazing or whatever, and it's taken from location A to location B, and then mutilation is done in location B. Then it's brought to location C, which is in the general proximity of location A. So after they kill the animal and take what they need, they bring the animal, the carcass of the animal back. And you say, well, they're dicks. They're going, here's your. But if they don't have the same type of thought process like us, let's say the word possession, if they don't understand, now that's a culture thing with us. We have no idea how other societies develop on other planets. Obviously, we have no idea. Religion may never have been introduced. A lot of stuff may never have been introduced based on, the society that. So we have possession here, and if they learned enough to think that, hey, that cow belongs, or that goat or that horse belongs to that person. Oh, we want what we want, but we're going to give it back to them because it's theirs. It's sort of like stealing your car, taking the engine out, but giving you the car back because it's still registered to you. As silly as that sounds, we don't know how an alien would think. And if they don't understand possession, they're just thinking, hey, look, I'm going to take that guy's lawnmower and I'm going to mow my yard with it. I'm going to run it out of gas, but it's still his lawnmower. Give it back to him. So it's that kind of a thought process, and it's kind of fun when you start thinking about that, because then it makes you look at other avenues of trying to understand why things are being done the way they're being done.
Gotcha. Does anybody have any more follow-ups before we move on to Mr. Connor? No. All right. So this question came in from our chat, and Connor would like to know, what are your thoughts on the Bob Lazar story?
Bob Lazar.
Bob, whatever.
No, not Lazar.
Lazar. Bob Lazar.
Lazar. Oh my God, my wife's name is Tamara, and they always call her Tamara. And I mean, it's the same spelling. It's Tamara.
Tomato, tomato.
But tomorrow. And I go, it's not tomorrow, it's today. Anyway, so
sorry, I can't get behind that one. I can't get behind that one. Sorry.
So Bob Lazar is pretty cool. Now, when I first started doing this years ago, and in the Beavis and Butthead days before that, I was investigating Roswell, and then I was also really curious on Area 51, Groom Lake, the whole bit. And so, what Bob Lazar's story is pretty cool, considering what he was talking about, working at a facility at Area 51 called S4, trying to reverse engineer what he called a sports model. There was other, ships there too that were taken, or that they had. But we always heard the stories as from a UFO standpoint. It's just where it's just like when you do a UFO investigation and you talk to multiple witnesses, you take a little bit of each one of their eyewitness testimonies, and only those ones that coincide or make sense that interlock with everybody else's. That's what you focus on, because you go off. So it's the same thing with Area 51. So you have Lazar, who says he's worked there and he's worked on the in S4 and stuff. We've had a lot of sightings out of Area 51, but then you go back further to Roswell. Now Roswell, and that happened in 47. In the later part of June 47, the Mount Rainier sighting coined the phrase flying saucer. Then a week later, we had Roswell. So supposedly the wreckage and the surviving alien, or what they named EBE for extraterrestrial biological entity, ended up somewhere. They really didn't have a secure facility for. They took a lot of the wreckage and they took it to Wright Field, which is now called Wright-Patterson over Ohio. Wright-Patterson, that's the name of the two runways at the time. I think it was just called Wright Field. And the reason why they went to Wright Field is because Wright Field was our foreign technology department was based there. So during the war, whatever aircraft they would capture or whatever, they would take it there, any type of technology, reverse engineer. So it kind of made sense that's where they put it. And then lo and behold, early 50s, this land is grabbed over by Rachel, Nevada, Nellis Air Force Base, and Area 51 is designed or built. And so we think that stuff that was at Hangar 18 over Wright Field ended up there. And then over the years, they brought in, scientists to work on it. There was a story, and it's kind of interesting. It was one of those stories that it happened at Area 51, at S4. Did it happen at Dulce? A lot of people say it happened at Dulce. A lot of people say it happened there. Maybe we don't know. But there was a conflict between gray aliens and humans, and we get pointed towards Dulce. But what happened was, we do know from supposedly there was alien presence. One story at Area 51, there was a conflict between the humans and the aliens, and there was an event, and some of the scientists were killed. That was one story. And then so they brought that Lazar came in with other new scientists to replace the ones that were killed. The other story is the scientists over Area 51 were reverse engineering technology, not fully understood. Something happened, and they were killed due to the technology, not because of the aliens. That's another story too. So either way, lo and behold, Lazar just jumps right in and gets in. I was a good friend with Stanton Friedman before he, unfortunately he passed away a couple years back. And we've always talked about Bob Lazar, and he didn't like Bob Lazar. He thought that Bob Lazar wasn't a physicist, even though he talked like one and he worked like one, but he really didn't have the background from what Stanton Friedman said, being a nuclear physicist. And then the places that Bob Lazar claimed he worked, there was never any proof he actually worked there. Well, then there was one place he actually worked at where he claimed he worked at, and they said he never worked there. There was one quarterly phone directory that someone was able to get a hold of that wasn't shredded and had Bob Lazar's name on it, or in it. So that claim that Bob Lazar was truthful, saying he worked at this one facility, even though they said he never worked there. And it's so, he's a smart guy. I like to think the reason why he came back out speaking again was because of me. I hate to say that. I kind of sound thick-headed about that. But let me tell you what happened. So Bob Lazar got out there for a while, and then he stayed silent. And he was off the grid for a while. And I did an episode for Unexplained Files Season 2 back in 2016 or so, just around that time. And I went after Bob Lazar to try and grab him because he hadn't been lecturing, hadn't been doing anything. And we tried to get a hold of him. And he wasn't returning our phone calls and emails. So I went to Roger Lear, who was a son of the guy who established Lear jets. And Roger Lear flew for the CIA top secret programs, and he knew Bob Lazar personally. And we talked, and I interviewed Roger Lear for Unexplained Files. And then I asked him to contact Bob Lazar to see if we could interview him too. And Roger Lear claimed that Roger Lear was one of the references for Bob Lazar to work at Area 51. Roger Lear also was the one who helped release the Dulce papers, if people follow that. So Roger Lear's a pretty cool guy. Some of the things he says seems, kind of far out there, but when you talk about UFOs, they're kind of far out there anyway. So anyway, Bob Lazar, still didn't agree even after we think Roger Lear asked him. So when the show aired, Roger Lear's on there, and then shortly thereafter it airing, Bob Lazar started coming out. So I'd like to think it was our season of Unexplained Files Season 2 that got Bob Lazar out there again. I can't say that's the truth, but it just was it's just a kind of a cool coincidence. That's all.
Gotcha. Anybody have any follow-ups on that? Nope. Okay. Lauren, Scott, where are you taking us?
So Scott, if you don't mind, I have a question. Well, I have multiple questions. But so the one thing I want to know is, I know you've mentioned you've done a lot of cases over the years, and you've done a lot of investigations with the same people over the years and everything like that. Has there ever been like an incident or a case that has truly shocked you?
Well, yeah. Couple things. Hang on a second here.
Oh no.
Okay,
What's
so this
happening?
guy right here.
Oh.
Right. There it is. Right. You see it?
Yeah, the book you didn't bring to Paracon. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not my book. It was written about me, and it was basically written after a movie producer saw that one episode I was talking about on Unexplained Files Season 2. After he saw that one episode called The Paranormal Highway of America, he goes, "Heck, this would be a great movie." So he contacted me, and then I agreed. Okay, I'll sell my life rights on my theory, the 37th degree latitude theory, to that. Well, anyway, he commissioned Ben Mesrick, who is already an acclaimed writer. That couple of his books went to movies. One was on Facebook and one was on the MIT students that broke Las Vegas. So he commissioned him to write the book about me so they could write a script about the book. It's just kind of like the cart before the horse type of thing. So the first chapter of that book, and anybody that's watching this, if you go to Simon & Schuster and look up Ben Mesrick or the 37th Parallel, that book, I think the first chapter is still free for you to read. It was a little while ago when I checked up on it. And that first chapter talks about one of the cases that Lauren just asked me about. It was a case that, and I won't go into great detail, but it was so cool. Yet it was scary. It was really scary at the time. I was on a radio show, internet radio show, a lady that claimed that she's a psychic, and she's off the grid, and she's living somewhere in Uray, Colorado. And she asked me, she contacted me a couple of months after, just like doing the podcast here. She contacted me after doing the show. She says, I have a problem. I said, what's up? She goes, I've been in contact with a Bigfoot family. I went, what? She goes, I've been in contact with a Bigfoot family, telepathy type of thing. I'm going, okay, well, I don't really know a lot about that, although I've done a few Bigfoot investigations. But, the whole telepathy thing with Bigfoot, that's another one of those theories, obviously, one that's not been proved, sort of. So she says, she sent me some pictures of, clearly they were Bigfoot footprints around her property. And she says, and I've been talking to them about you, and they know, and they would like to meet you and this other guy that's a Bigfoot investigator who actually had a confrontation with a Bigfoot in the Appalachians in Tennessee. Actually, that was later. This was before that. Okay, so I'm dating myself. So this was a little bit later. So maybe that might even be tied. Anyway, sorry. So
that's right. Just talk to yourself, Chuck. That's okay.
Well, it's just the wheels are cranking there. Why this guy? Anyway, so Joe Fex out of Denver is a Bigfoot investigator. He's the one to train me. So we think, oh my gosh, that's a 5-hour drive, to Uray, but why not? Let's give it a shot. And she had some good evidence there, and so I said, okay. So I got my gear and I picked up Joe over in Denver because I had a 4-wheel drive. And off we went. And we went to her house, and she lives on top of this mesa outside of Uray, Colorado. And then she took us another 12 or so miles further into the forest on this ranch road to this area where there was a clearing. And we were above, if people are familiar, like Colorado, we have aspens, and the aspens only grow to a certain altitude, and then above that is the pines. So we were above the aspens into the pines, so we were close to 10,000 feet and up a little higher. And she says, this is where they told me. And I go, well, how'd you know to come here? She goes, because they told me to come here, and it guided me here with this map that they gave me. So, just this vision. So that's how we got there. So, okay. I don't know anything about this. I'm not going to say that, she's lying. I'm still learning the whole, people who say they're psychic or have abilities. So I go, we'll give it a shot. If anything, it's a beautiful night and we'll do some sky watching. Maybe we'll see some UFOs, whatever. So I set my camera up on a tripod. I was using, I don't want to grab it, I'll get off camera again. I was using Sony Handycams with the 8mm. They have really good night vision. So I had 2 or 3 of those. I had backup batteries. And so I put a tripod in the middle. I had a Minolta camera also. And then Joe and the psychic were just off to the side of the opening and clearing, and we had made like a little little night camp there. Now we were going to spend the night. We just brief a couple lawn chairs and a heater. I brought a propane heater and stuff for the psychic, and I guess it was about 9:30 or so. I'm out by myself in a clearing, not that far, maybe 50 yards from them, and she starts flipping out. And I kid you not. And actually in the book they talk about this, but it was even worse in person. She was just flipping. She goes, something's going to happen. I'm not quite sure what's going to, but I don't feel good. Something's going to happen. I'm kind of afraid. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just, and she starts talking about it. About the time she started talking about it, Joe goes, Chuck, you see those flashes of lights in the pines and in the woods? I go, from my perspective, I couldn't see them, because I'm like here and they're like way over here, right? And so their perspective, they could see them. I'm going, no, I don't see them. And so I had my night vision binoculars, ran to my truck and grabbed them. And I started looking in the area, and I go, oh, what the hell is this? These little flashes of light. I go, doom, doom, doom. What the heck is that? These little flashes of light and stuff. Not a lot of it. You kind of like flashing a little ball of light here, and it's gone. And I'm going, holy, yeah, I can see it, Joe. And just about that time, she just hit the ground. She was almost in convulsions. She was just crying, just lost it. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. And this is it. We're all gonna die. I don't know what's going on. We're all gonna die. And she, oh my gosh, she was just flipping out. So, while she's doing that, I'm trying to take video of these flashes of light. So I turn my video camera on and my night vision. I turn it on and it goes blink, blink. And it just goes out. The battery just drains just like that. So I ran and grabbed my other batteries. The second battery in, I put it on. It goes blink, blink. I'm like, so I have a third battery. My third battery is charged, and if they're heavy duty batteries, so they go for a couple hours. So I put the third one. I'm like, okay, I gotta think. All right, if I put it in record mode, it might die again because it consumes more current. If you put it in record mode, what if I put it in snapshot mode? Maybe it doesn't pull as much current and won't drain as fast. And I'm just thinking this real fast, right? So I put it in snapshot mode. I got one picture. I got a picture of this beam of light coming down and this couple little lights, and then the battery gone. I'm going, oh shit, my truck. So I ran over to the truck. Meanwhile, she's on the floor just screaming and just having all kinds of shit. I go to my truck, I start it up, and it started up, and I let it run, right? I had a keyless entry in that one, so I just let it run for a little bit. And I'm going, okay, I don't want to lose the battery in that, because that's happened a few times with me before where something happens and the ESD or EMF, I'm sorry, will drain your car battery. So now, Joe and I grab her and we take her to my truck. We put her in my truck, and I lock the doors with my key fob, and I leave her in there locked, running. I'm not going to leave the keys in there because she's going to drive off of it. And I go, we need to break camp. As we're breaking camp, by that time the lights were gone, and we broke camp. We threw it in the back of my truck real quick and go, let's see what happens. But we got to get our witness out of here because I think she's going to freaking have a cardiac arrest. And then it just went silent. And this is such a cool campfire story. So it just kind of went silent. You could hear like a pin drop out there. And then off a distance, you could hear this loud scream. And it's going, rah, rah. It's almost like an elk or something screaming. And it's like it's screaming for its life. And it's getting louder and louder as it's coming towards us from the woods where the opening is. And Joe Fex wears glasses. And his eyes are like bigger than his glasses. And I'm kind of like, okay, I have no cameras. The batteries are all dead. I can't. And we're slowly walking backwards to my truck, and we're watching this thing. We don't know what's coming out of the forest towards us. And you hear him going, ah, ah, and all of a sudden he goes, ah, and just in the middle of the scream, dead silence. It wasn't like a, ah, it was like something killed it in the middle of a mid scream. And I looked over at Joe, and I'm thinking through my head, mutilation, something. This is a Bigfoot sighting that turned into possible mutilation sighting, because I've investigated elk being mutilated. I did an investigation on the first season, Unexplained Files, of 116 elk that were killed or were found dead in New Mexico. It wasn't a mutilation, but they still don't know what killed them. But other animals too. So I'm thinking, holy shit. And I look over at Joe and I said, I got a 40 caliber on my hip. It ain't big enough for whatever took that animal down. We're getting the hell out of here. And we hopped in and off we went. And we got her home as quick as possible because, I thought for sure that we were going to lose her. So that was pretty cool. That's mentioned in the first chapter of the book. It's better when I tell it because I was there. And I'm not really exaggerating. She, to a point, it almost looked like she had rabies. She had saliva coming out of her mouth and she was foaming. Not like, foaming, but you could see it coming out. So I knew that, she was going through some serious problems. Now, from a psychic point of view, and I'm still up in the air about psychics. I'll use them if I can, and I have in the past. I don't totally understand it. I think we all have some type of psychic, ability. And if she was an intuitive, she was a hell of an intuitive because she was really in tune to what's going on there. but you could clearly see that, she thought she was going to die, and she thought all of us were going to die. So, yeah, we got our tails out of there pretty quick. So, was that good enough?
Yeah, that was, yeah. I don't know what I was expecting, but that's a crazy story.
Well, the other fun was I was doing an investigation out in the middle of the desert, and I'm sitting there all by myself. Back in the day, no one would go with me because they were afraid. So I go off by myself with my camera and stuff. I tell my wife, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm planning coming back. If I don't come back tomorrow morning, you know where to send help. And literally, that was the case. I've done most of my investigations by myself, because literally no team would ever. I would have a team, and then they would just booger out on me. They're afraid. And one of them, out in the middle of nowhere, I got a night vision monocular, and I'm looking around in an area where they had animal mutilations, and they had a triangular sighting, and look around, and two eyes are staring right at me. They took the whole frame of view of my camera, and it threw me back, and I hit the front of my truck. I look out, and a cow had walked up on me. I don't know how I missed a 1,100-pound cow walking, but had walked up on me. And those night vision monoculars are 384X, so his eyes are like this giant. And all I could see was those eyes. And oh my God, I was listening to Art Bell at the time. That's why he walked up on me, because I had the radio on. I was listening to Art Bell. So I was already in the mood. So there's some fun ones too.
Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate the stories.
Yeah, I just want to say really quick before we get to Scott's question, is that the story that you just told about the psychic lady who, like, everybody thought they were going to die, batteries are getting drained. She thought she was going to, like, off herself or just die of natural causes, whatever. But your classification of that was a really cool experience.
Yes. Yeah, you know what? At the time, it's scary. I've had a few scary experiences, but when you look back, it's cool from a standpoint from a ufology, from an field investigator, because you learn. I learned something from every one of my investigations, and you learn more about correlations. And so at this point, that's when I started tying in Bigfoot and alien. Now, we've always had UFO sightings around Bigfoot sightings and stuff, and just recently I came out with a blog about on EMF being the common denominator. But that's so you learn something from your investigations. I was a volunteer deputy for 8 years, but I've done UFO stuff by myself for such a long time that I get scared, but it still draws me out there to do this stuff on my own. I don't know what it is. I don't, I think it's just a draw to try and understand for myself, what's going on. And would I go back there again? Yeah, but from what I learned from that experience, I would probably better prepare myself with other things too. Since then, when I do an investigations like that, I'll take a film camera. Kind of hard to find those now. But so I take a film camera. At least I can maybe capture pictures before. Well, unless the electromagnetic field is so high, it ruins the chemicals on the film. I've never seen that yet. But obviously, in ghost investigations, there are all those cases where people have taken pictures of apparitions old time, with film cameras, and it changes. You can see where it affects the chemistry or the chemicals in the film. So you kind of learn things. But would I do it again? Oh, hell yeah. That's a rush.
I can imagine. Scott, final question. Because apparently you didn't have one.
Yeah, he answered the questions I had.
Oh, sweet. So. Go Chuck.
If Lauren, if you've got other questions.
Do you have anything on Bigfoot?
Oh, I do. I have like 5 Post-it notes worth of questions here. So I was thinking about this because we all have like a top few international locations that we want to go to at some point in our lives. Of course, I think most of ours on our team are grouped towards like ghosts and stuff like that. But I was wondering if there was some place outside of the U.S. that is crazy with UFO activity that you've always wanted to visit.
There's two in the U.S. Both I can't tell you about, unfortunately, because I was sworn to secrecy. That are just like the Skinwalker Ranch. The one that I actually investigated, and then I'll tell you, I'll answer your question in a minute. One I've actually investigated in the past. It's not in Colorado; it's outside of Colorado, and I've been there like 3 times. Some scary stuff there. In my opinion, scarier than the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah by far. Of course, I also think the Bradshaw Ranch is a lot better than the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah also, because the Bradshaw Ranch has some really cool stuff, including prehistoric reptiles, which is what? People see dinosaurs. I have seen them in that area. What I would love to do, and you just hit a sore spot when you asked me that question. I'll tell you what.
I'm sorry.
Because for the past year and a half, I've been trying to get into Stonehenge inside the circle. And last year in April, my wife and I had a tour flight to the UK, and I finagled through some tour guides and stuff and found one within a time frame that we were there that they could take me inside the circle. Now, Stonehenge, when you visit Stonehenge, you walk around the outside and it's fenced off. But there are cases before and after tourists are gone that you hook up with certain tour. Now, they have few more tour guides that do it, but it's hard to get in because they're very limited. But actually get into the circle of Stonehenge, and I was going to take a night vision. I wanted to be there at night and take a night vision camera and then EMF camera, some other equipment too, just for the heck of it, just kind of run it real quick. We were there for about an hour or so. So because of COVID last year, I had to reschedule. So we scheduled last year to end of last year. COVID was hitting, so I figured we'll be done by the beginning of this year. So let's reschedule again. No, rescheduled to September of this year, and the U.S. is still barred from going to the UK right now, and there's still some issues there. So I had to cancel that again and to reschedule sometime next year. So I mean, Stonehenge has been at my grasp for at least 3 separate times. And because of COVID, I haven't been able. That's one of the places. If we decide, I'm almost to the point right now where I'm going, strike 3 on the UK. I'm not having good luck with that. Maybe I'm going to use my vouchers through British Airways and whatever, to actually go to Athens. Athens is another place that's actually on the 37th, parallel. That's where the Cultural Society was created. And there's a lot of cool things going on over there. So Athens would be a pretty cool place to go and kind of do some investigations. A couple years ago, we went to Scotland, and I got out there a little bit and did some investigations on my own, just for the heck of it. But some of the folklore in Scotland, some of the things they talk about, the water horses, and they're so cool. So as soon as you step out of the U.S., you kind of lose that whole Native American culture of things that we're brought up to, because that's our past here, on this continent. But when you get into Europe, you're introduced to all kinds of other things, leprechauns, like I said, water horses and other things. Hawaii Menehuni's. So we'll see, why were you thinking of a particular place?
No, I was just curious because honestly, I was thinking about it. I don't know many UFO hotspots outside of the U.S. All the ones that I've heard of are in the U.S., so I was just curious.
Oh, no, that's why one of the reasons I wanted to go to UK was to go to Rendlesham Forest. Rendlesham Forest, you guys look that up. There was a craft that touched down there that our military saw, because we have a military base there, and that's a biggie. And then Lilton, UK is where a lot of crop circles. One of the investigations I did out here in the U.S. was called the Roswell Rock. And the Roswell Rock has got this really cool crop circle that wasn't engraved in it. It's actually 3-dimensional coming out of it, and it was found not too far from where we were investigating, or still investigating, the Roswell crash. And it's like 2 concentric circles with a half moon, and it's really cool looking. But the rock itself is polarized. One side is more positive than the other side, and you can put a magnet down in the middle, and it'll spin the rock. It's way cool. And Robert Ridge has got that. He's got it in a safe deposit box somewhere. But that was my investigation that ancient aliens stole from me, plagiarized. Thank you, Giorgio, for that one. He used all my information. He filmed me, and then I even gave him samples of the rock. They cut me out, and they made it look like it was his and Linda Moulton Howe's. And that's why I have a sour taste for Ancient Aliens, the TV show, and for Giorgio, because I got it up the butt with him once. But it's still pretty cool. And so that's Littleton was the where that crop circle came from. That was on the Roswell Rock, and I wanted to check out. They're still having some crop circles pop up in the UK. We talked to a couple of when I say we, my sister and I were investigating that for over a year. We've investigated the Roswell Rock, and then it just got plagiarized, within 2 days of someone investing their own time. But we talked to, I just forgot their names. I'm sorry, but they were crop circle enthusiasts, and they've been into like 90 different crop circles. They live here in the U.S., but they travel and they go into crop circles. And it was really interesting when I showed them the picture. I didn't say anything about it. I just showed them the picture of the crop circle or the rock that had a crop circle on it, and they go, "Yeah, we know exactly that one is." Out of all the crop circles we've ever been into, that one we'll never ever forget. And well, why? He said because when we walked into the circle, something happened to us personality-wise. After about 30 minutes or so of us doing our own investigations, we started fighting, and we don't fight like that. They were really, their tempers were really high. And a couple of other people were experiencing the same things. They was like combating each other. And as soon as they left the circle, they got out of the crop circle, and roughly about an hour or so, they became, back to their normal personality. So their personalities physically changed, in the crop circle, just changed them completely. And so whatever energy was in that crop circle affected their energy. And we're all energy, for God's sakes. We're all, little electrical impulses shooting through our bodies. So it affected them that much. So that's pretty cool. So I wanted to see Littleton because I wanted to see, I kind of want to run my own investigations. And they have some other old sites that I wanted to look at too in the UK that we were scheduled to see, and I kind of went out the door again. So.
Well, Chuck, final thought here is when you finally do get to go, especially if you get to go into Stonehenge, I know 5 assistants that would be perfect for that trip to go with.
I don't know, depends on how much money you got.
Well, we can pay. All I'm saying is that equipment is heavy. And, I can carry the camera, and Lauren can carry the tripod, and Haley can carry the batteries, and Scott can bring himself. And
I would much prefer if someone out there that's listening is part of a production company and brings us all together as a team, UFO investigators and paranormal investigators like you guys, and then, pays for us to go out there to go to specific spots. This was our vacation. And if anybody read the book, The 37th Parallel, they would know that part of the book is every vacation that I ever went on with my family, I drag them to a UFO spot.
Yes, you do.
My vacations around UFO spots, because that's the only way, I could, at the time, raising 3 kids, that you could get out of the state, and other places. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to go here. We're going to stop at Chaco Canyon, or we're going to stop at Taos, or we're going to stop at Dulce, or we're going to stop, over there where the Joplin lights are, or the Barfa lights, or whatever. So they'd be the same case, but I would love to do it with a production company, because that way, not only would we have a budget, but we have a budget big enough that we could bring a group of people in and spend some time there and pay to go back multiple times and actually spend time there, rather than just an hour slot here and there that we're only allowed to as just tourists.
Well,
so I'm all for it.
Okay. Well, I just want to make clear for anybody that's watching, I call dibs. So
hey, look,
back the F off if you're trying to get up on our territory here. So
hey, I got an agent now, so
Well, I don't care about your agent because I can just go to you.
No, because I've actually talked about you to my agent. I said that if there's any type of projects out there that need these type of individuals, I know we can assemble one pretty quickly. That's
Yes,
what
sir.
you can thank Ben Hansen for that. The nice thing about the Para-Unity conference is not so. It's so much that the information as lecturers that we love to talk about. Some of the stuff that we go through as I just did. And I love to talk to people there too. Unfortunately, there's a lot of cases where I can't help people because it's just out of my budget to to really help them and fly to their state and help them and stuff. But besides that, there's a lot of multiplexing too. So as lecturers, speakers, we get to talk to other speakers and trade information back and forth. And I've known Ben Hansen for a few years now. I was on one of his shows, and so we were kicking around agent thing. So he turned me on to a person that he knows that's an agent, and this guy is really good. He's been involved in the paranormal, and he has a few people that he's representing, big name people in the paranormal. So I'm really happy that he agreed to. So unfortunately, anything else coming up from now on has got to go through my agent. Although I've already talked to him about the Para-Unity conference or the one in December.
Well, there you have it, everybody. You were here when we started our career. So, Chuck,
is this really a career? It's more of it's a hobby that's turned into
technically for me, this is my career.
Yeah.
So for everybody else, no. and not until I can pay them enough to make it their career.
That's the problem. I design microchips. I'm an IC mass design engineer. I've had to change my career as a mass designer in microchip and semiconductor design about 20 some years ago. I went from salary to contracting. I was salary a little bit before that, but I slowly went to contracting because when times came up where I needed to blow to do something like an investigation, I didn't have to worry about a manager going, "You can't leave, you're hourly." Da, da, da. But as a contractor, I can say, "Hey, I'm bugging out today. I'll finish my stuff up later," because that's what contractors do. And as long as we do it, we're not violating our contractors. So it's contracted consultant. So I physically had to change my career, and there's been ups and downs because of that. Because non-salary people who are contractors, sometimes the contracts are up and you're out of work for a while, and you're like scraping for money. And that's why I owe the IRS a lot of money right now, because a lot of times the money I put aside for taxes when I was contracting, you lose a contract, you have to use your tax money to make your bills. So there's issues in your personal life that are detrimental to or UFOs that are detrimental to your personal life. But in my opinion, the positive is so much greater. The work stuff I can deal with, that's just business, and I'll deal with that. But when you get into the paranormal, like what you guys are doing, those are game changers. There's always going to be work, right? There's always going to be a job. At one point, I had to clean carpets, and I'm an engineer, but I'm out there cleaning carpet because that's the only thing I could do to pay the bills because there's no work. But the paranormal part, that's the driving force. It's the need to understand. It's the need to know. It's the need to learn. And the more we learn about the paranormal, believe it or not, the more we're learning about ourselves. And that's what makes it so cool. So there you are. For the people out there that are doing this or watching this, you may want to jump in. Go to these conferences. Go to the Para-Unity one in Vegas. Come say hi to all of us out there. If you can't afford it, try and hit the lectures in your area, and at least get more involved in understanding what's going on in your own backyard. Like I said, the more you know about that, the more you learn about yourself.
Absolutely. So that's all the time that we have for tonight. Chuck, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. So much new stuff that I learned I'm really going to have to process. And I'll probably ask you about it on Monday, because on Monday you're coming on the Odyssey Files.
Not Wednesday. That's right. It's Monday.
That's right. Good of you to remember. So
My phone will tell me.
good. I'm glad your phone will tell you. So, all right. Well, that does it. We'll be back next week with an all new episode. Everybody, until then, stay safe, stay healthy. We want to see you back here next week.